Hello and welcome back to TFB. That may sound like a war machine, but contrary to everything that's happening around us, it is not. In fact, it is a car that was built before the First World War. But the war and the history books buried its glory. I know you're here for the story and not the hype, so I would say go grab yourself a good cup of coffee while I tell you the story of this Italian. And let me tell you, this story is going to be very interesting, so I urge you to watch it all the way till the end. And this is a horizontal video, which means that this story is going to last longer than an espresso. Imagine a car so violent that its own race car drivers refused to get back in it after their first drive. It was built in a tiny town of Turin in Italy, a town that is better known today for building tiny, cute little Fiat 500s. But at one point, it built this, a car that was known as the Beast of Turin. Now, to understand the history behind this, we need to go all the way back to the start of the 20th century. You see, the French had come up with this concept of a single race called the Grand Prix. It was known to be the ultimate race of the champions. It would decide which is the best car in the world, the best car maker in the world, the best race driver in the world. You get the drift. For the first 2 years, it was dominated by Renault. In the third year, however, the Germans fought back. Mercedes took over. Mercedes completely decimated its competition. And the French didn't really like that. Renault put up its arms and said, hey, it's too expensive to go up against Mercedes. We are boycotting this event. Yep, that's exactly what they did, which is why the other car makers started turning their attention to land speed records. Each car was made more extreme than the last. Germany had the Blitzen Benz, a 200 horsepower monster that was smashing records and headlines. Fiat, who were barely a decade old, took it upon themselves as a personal challenge, a national challenge to go up against the Blitzen Benz, which is why they created this one. In 1910, Fiat told its engineers to keep all sensibility aside and build the ultimate land speed record machine. And so was born the Beast of Turin. But that is not the name it was born with. You see, Fiat had already built some performance machines under its S nomenclature.
Ha!
Nah, not that. Not that either. We are talking about the S61, which was built for competitions like the Indy 500. It was followed up by the S74, which again was built for circuit racing. The S76, however, was purely built for straight line speed, land speed records. So it wasn't meant to be a racing car in the usual sense. It was essentially a purpose built straight line weapon. And you know what? Only two were ever built. One stayed with Fiat in Italy, and the other was built for a Russian who wanted his own go at those land speed records. And both the cars would live hard lives, disappear, and then almost a century later, be reborn as a fire spitting monster. And that is where the story gets very interesting. But hang on, to beat the Blitzen Benz, Fiat's solution was very simple: more engine. How much more? Well, the numbers are absolutely ridiculous. Under that riveted bodywork sat an inline 4 engine with a cubic capacity of 28.3 liters. You heard that right, not 2.8 liters like your Toyota Fortuner, 28.3 liters. Each cylinder was bigger than the entire engine in entry-level hatchbacks. The bore and stroke was 190 millimeters by 250 millimeters, so the piston diameter is actually bigger than an Italian pizza. And it's not just that, it was really advanced for its time. You got 4 valves per cylinder, overhead valves. You got multiple spark plugs per cylinder. You see, a Maruti 800 only gave us 4 valves per cylinder almost a century after that. So you can imagine how ahead of its time it was. Quite ahead, in fact, because it put out about 290 to 300 horses, which may not sound like much today, but back in 1910, 1911, that's some headlining stuff. In fact, I also hear that back then people would say that this car is faster than the fastest aeroplane of the time. So imagine having to get into a car like this wearing an open face helmet, goggles, leather overalls, and risking your life. Not many wanted to do that, including Fiat's own test drivers and racing drivers. And that's before you come to the shocking torque figure. No official word on it, but estimates say that it put out between 2700 to 2800 Newton meters. That's more than a Bugatti hypercar of today's times. That's some crazy stuff. In fact, its current owner says that whenever he takes the car out for a drive, which is in pretty pristine condition, doing between 120 to 130 kilometers an hour on the expressways takes a cruising RPM of about 300 to 400 from the engine. That's ridiculous. That's not even the idling RPM on most of our vehicles, two wheelers, four wheelers. Now, all that power went down to the road via a multi plate clutch. 92 plates, I'm told. That's complex, even by today's standards. And it was a 4-speed gearbox. But it fed power only to the rear wheels. And there was a twin chain setup, much like a motorcycle, just into two. And these were exposed chains. The brakes were only on the rear wheels and very humble drum brakes because this was made for land speed records. You had to go maximum and then you had all the space in the world to come to a halt. So they simply did not put any brakes on the front. So imagine that kind of performance with no front brakes, absolutely scary. And doesn't end there. The car only weighed about 1700 kilos. It rode on solid axles with leaf springs and it sits on really narrow tires. At speed, the whole thing shakes, the chains whip, the open side exhaust shoot flames and unburned fuel right next to your elbow. Of course, it was monstrosity. No wonder they called it the Beast. In fact, that name came from Fiat's own test driver, Felice Nazzaro, who only took one drive in this car, took it to its top speed, and then vowed never to drive it again. In fact, he was instrumental in calling it the Beast of Turin. On paper, the S76 had one job: take the land speed record away from Blitz and Benz. In 1911 and 1912, Fiat ran the car at the European venues like the Saltburn Sands in England, chasing ever higher speeds. It set a 1 mile flying start speed of about 116 mph, not kmph, which was astonishing for the time. And some runs reportedly hit over 130 miles an hour. In 1913, one attempt actually saw the car go to 134 miles an hour, but they refused to record that run because it couldn't finish the return run, which was mandated by law to actually have it in the history books. But all enthusiasts know 134 mph is what this beast managed. So it's safe to say that the Beast of Turin lived in this weird space. Unofficially the fastest thing on wheels back then, but officially just a terrifying sideshow. As regulations changed and the World War I happened, its spotlight, its glory faded. After the First World War, giant record cars using pre-war tech didn't really fit into Fiat's plans anymore. The factory S76 was dismantled around 1919, but the engine stayed with Fiat in another location. And not just that, it survived, but the original bodywork and many other parts were lost. The second car left Europe with that Russian prince who wanted to set his own land speed records and then somehow ended up in Australia. There it lost its original engine and it was used and abused like any other old big vintage car of the Edwardian era, to be specific, until finally it crashed and burned. By the mid 20th century, the Beast of Turin was gone, long gone, surviving mainly in a few photos, drawings, and myths in old motorsport books. But I'm glad Hot Wheels has brought it back into the conversation. Decades later, a young British enthusiast called Duncan Pittaway saw the picture of the S76 and instantly got obsessed with it, no other word. In fact, he started looking for the parts, he started looking for those old remains of the Australian S76, and he actually managed to procure it. And later, he managed to convince Fiat to give him the engine of the original car. Incredibly, the original S76 engine from the factory had actually survived, sitting separate from any chassis. And by procuring that engine, he had the two important ingredients that he needed: the original engine and the original chassis, which came from the second car along with the running gear. The gearbox, however, had to be fabricated, and it was one complex unit to do. Using the drawings, period photos, and surviving components, he and his team spent more than a decade recreating the missing gearbox, bodywork, and many other small parts. The seized engine had to be completely stripped, repaired, and carefully coaxed back to life. Today, the Beast of Turin is just a rolling reminder of how extreme the racing back in the early 20th century was. We are talking about massive engines, absolutely no safety equipment, and this is before wind tunnels, traction control, or even four-wheel brakes. Engineers chase speed with raw displacement, bravery, and chain drive. It also captures a very human story. A car made out of national pride to take on Germans, a car that was lost in history, a car that was buried under the effects of war, practically. And then the sheer obsession of an enthusiast to bring it all back together and back to life. I mean, this is the kind of automotive stories that keep us going, don't they? So the next time you hear someone say they don't build it like this anymore, remind them that once upon a time in Turin, Fiat built a car so wild that even racing drivers called it a beast. And thanks to some really dedicated madmen, the original one still roars to tell a story. And thanks to Hot Wheels, we can have a part of that story, a part of that history on our collector shelves at Pocket Change. And of course, I wouldn't go away without talking about the Hot Wheels model itself. So the real one was called the S76, hence the 76 on the car. And then it sat or rolled on really skinny tires, and that is exactly what you see even on the real one. It had rigid axles, it had a very simple chassis, and you see that, of course, the one on the Hot Wheels is plastic. If they do make it in premium, and I really hope they do, they will put rubber tires and metal on metal construction. And what you see here in gold is actually the chain drive, and you will see it on both the sides because it actually ran two chains even on the original, one on either end. And you also see the steering, it was a right hand drive, and you see the two golden seats here as well. And this was made up in brass. You see a more gold finish here instead of a brass, but with time, of course, I think the way it starts aging, this model starts aging, it'll start looking like brass. And what you see here are those two flame throwing exhausts on the side. Now that engine cover may give you hints of a much larger engine, but if you did go through the story all the way till the end properly, then you would know what the configuration is. And you also see this little black line, and that's actually the leather belt that they would use on top of that engine cover to keep it in place and prevent it from flying off. It rolls freely, of course, because it is, after all, a Hot Wheels. And I quite like the details that they've done on this, and I really hope I'm able to find a premium version of this in true 1:64 scale at some point. And because you've hung around till the end, I'll tell you the other model that you definitely must look for if you find one. I'm also on the hunt. I don't know if a 1:64 exists yet, but we need the Blitzen Benz, that white color monster that this one was designed to go after. So if you are able to get both, that would be a historic piece of collection to have. Let me know what are your thoughts. If you watched the video all the way till the end, thank you so much for doing that. Don't forget to hit subscribe, don't forget to hit like, and do consider sharing this video with other friends on your timeline. It doesn't cost you a dime, but it keeps us going. Thank you so much for watching this one. Until the next one, take care, drive safe, and happy collecting.